Welcome to HezFM Recap. Sue has a deep love for superheroes, which she attributes to her father's comic book collection. Her favorite is Super Moon, a regular girl who grows up to be a superhero after being teased for having unusual hair. Sue wishes real life was as simple as Super Moon's, but she understands who she is and what she needs to accomplish. She is a very shy girl who experiences a lot of bullying at school. She wishes she had a special talent so that someone would take notice of her every day. Sue is irritated with her mother Maria because she is constantly preoccupied with her work at a prestigious lab and neglects her family. Worse. One afternoon after class, Sue is picked up by her dad Christopher and together they go to her mom's workplace to give her a birthday surprise. Sue hopes this will finally make her mom notice her. Today Maria is making a presentation at a scientific event hosted by Dr. Drill to talk about NT26D, a program that will prevent all illnesses. Sue and Christopher sneak inside the lab, and while Sue deletes some equations on the board to write a nice message, Christopher lights the birthday candles. Unfortunately, this sets off the fire alarm, causing Maria and her assistant Lenia to abandon the event to check on it. As soon as she sees the board, Maria becomes furious and scolds them both, saying her family doesn't understand how important this is. After the adults leave, Sue is really hurt by her mom's words and angrily throws the birthday cake. This accidentally hits a machine and starts some sort of process. A panicking Sue pushes random buttons to make it stop, but only causes the temperature control to become incredibly unstable and the lab's AI to activate a lockdown mechanism, trapping Sue inside. The AI voice tells Sue to stop pressing buttons, but Sue ignores it and runs to the reactor, which simply breaks. Sue tries to run away, but the doors are still locked and the reactor suddenly explodes with a bright light. Moments later, Sue is in an ambulance with only a few wounds, but she doesn't remember what happened. Lenia tells Christopher he can take his daughter home, and Sue is hurt to see Maria talk to Drill instead of checking on her. During the ride home, Sue looks under a bandage and sees the wound is glowing blue, but she doesn't comment on it. She only complains to her dad about her mother preferring the experiments to her own daughter. That night, Sue has a weird dream that mixes memories of the explosion and a meeting with Supermoon. When she wakes up in the morning, Sue is shocked to discover one of her arms is disappearing. It quickly comes back, but she feels so sick that she ends up puking in her bag, and she hides it from her dad to pretend everything is fine. Christopher drops Sue at school and before leaving, he reminds her that he'll be working abroad for a few days so it'll be just Sue and Maria at the house, which Sue isn't happy about. Afterward, Sue is checking her locker and discovers she's the only one that didn't get an invitation to the upcoming Halloween party. When she reaches for her comics, a new guy named Toby, who also adores Supermoon, approaches her out of the blue. Sue's constant bother, mean girl Eileen and her friends, break up their conversation. Sue feels so awful about them that her entire body vanishes when they take Toby's attention. She rushes to the bathroom in terror and grabs the paper towels there. The paper is moving by itself when a girl emerges from a stall at that precise moment, leading her to believe the restroom is haunted and flee. Sue then washes her hands, which causes her body to reappear. As a result, when the girl returns with a teacher, her tale isn't believed and they leave. Next, Sue puts her hands under the dryer, only for her arms to disappear and her body soon does the same. Meanwhile at the lab, Drill tells Maria to get everything ready for a new conference, not caring if everything was destroyed. After Drill leaves, things start falling off the table and Sue reveals up because she feels like a weird monster. Sue follows her mother's advice and attends school nevertheless. She tries calling her dad as well, but he doesn't answer. While Toby is practicing some amazing bicycle stunts in the schoolyard, he spots Sue and walks over to talk comics with her. They are interrupted once more by Eileen and her group, who tell Toby he is too cool to hang out with someone like Sue. Eileen is mortified when she gets a call with an odd ringtone out of the blue. That she runs away. Sue turns around and realizes this was a prank caused by App, a weird girl from the robotics club. Suddenly Lenia shows up at the school and takes Sue to the lab, where Maria can run some tests. She explains that the NT26D entered Sue's body, and when she checks her wounds, she discovers they're already healed. Using a heating pad, Sue can choose when to become invisible, and they discover that everything she touches also disappears with her, including other people, proved by Lenia touching her bare arm. However, an infrared camera can still detect Sue. Maria starts to worry that this power may be unsafe or used for evil purposes, so she wants to delete all her research. Sue abruptly loses her cool and yells at her mother, stating that they require all of that information in order to find an antidote, before bolting. Sue, who gets tired easily from using her powers, decides to hide for a while and takes a nap in the school's basement. App discovers her soundly asleep and wakes her by hurling water in her face because the robotics club is located in the basement. Subsequently, the girls head to the nearby diner for a bite to eat. Sue confides in App about her power, but App finds her untrustworthy. Eileen and her group show up at that point and begin making fun of them, so Sue seizes the opportunity to support her story. Using the heating pad, she becomes invisible and attacks Eileen with coffee and a bunch of condiments, scaring her away. Then she becomes visible again and App thinks she's awesome. Later Sue tells her mom the story and Maria laughs, which hurts Sue because she feels like a freak. Maria apologizes for everything and announces they'll have to go into hiding until it's all over. Meanwhile, a lab employee brings Drill the security footage of Maria and Lenia experimenting. Drill tells his employee to keep quiet as soon as he sees Sue, who is invisible. Maria brings a sleeping Sue home later that night. She is abducted by strange men who suddenly appear behind her as she makes her way to the passenger door to pick up her daughter. Sue wakes up to Maria screaming, and she hears her mother mention finding Alfred and a red mask. The men leave without her as Sue instantly turns invisible and sets off the car alarm. When Sue calls her father after being scared, Christopher doesn't buy the invisibility claim and believes the kidnapping was also a prank. Not knowing where to go, Sue goes to her school, where Toby is practicing his bicycle tricks. Sue has a breakdown and Toby comforts her before bringing her to his house. He offers her some tea and she becomes invisible, but when Sue says she's a freak, Toby corrects her and says her power is amazing. Sue is grateful but still forbids him from calling the police and falls asleep on his shoulder. The next morning, Sue and Toby go to Maria's car and the door somehow opens on its own. After they retrieve Maria's laptop bag, Sue receives a mysterious call telling her to get in the car's trunk as fast as possible. Both teens get in the trunk when it opens on its own too, and after closing it, which allows them to hear the voice of some men looking around and then driving the car to Drill's facility. When the trunk is finally opened, they see App, who was the one to make the call and now has defeated the men with a taser. Then App reveals she has security footage showing a van belonging to Drill's company kidnapped Maria. Her theory is that Drill wants to force her to make more NT-26D. Sue wants to rescue her mom, so she'll sneak inside the facility, bringing Toby with her and making them both invisible. As they cross a hallway, Toby trips and loses Sue's hand, becoming visible in front of 3 scientists. He starts telling a story about a portal, but luckily Sue grabs him and makes him invisible again. The duo makes it to the lab and Toby finds Maria's phone plus a sample of NT-26D while Sue falls asleep on a chair. Outside, App sees dangerous men approaching and warns Toby, so he tries to wake Sue up by kissing her. Sue stops him before they make contact, then she makes them invisible to run away. They're careful in the hallways to avoid bumping into anyone, but when they reach the door, Toby accidentally hits his face against it and leaves some blood on the glass. The guards start chasing them and soon Sue can't keep up her invisibility anymore, but luckily App shows up in her bike and makes it go faster by activating a flux capacitor. With Toby's cycling skills, they get to escape safely. Afterward, App takes them to her Aunt Laura's house. Laura asks to see Sue in private and reveals she used to study with Maria and Lenia, but they had a fight and fell out. Back then Laura tried to alert Maria to the risks involved in selling NT-26D to Drill, but she ignored me. After looking through the phone's files, App discovers a video that Maria took of herself being attacked while running. They are unable to identify the object in the corner of the screen. They open the laptop bag when they hear a strange noise coming from it and discover the red mask Maria mentioned. When they turn it on, Sue recognizes Alfred, the AI she heard about in the lab, through a hologram. Before it can say anything more, App's mother calls to ask them to supper. Alfred is unsure of Maria's whereabouts. App notes that this is while enjoying a pizza. The first time she's brought friends home because she didn't have any before them. After dinner, the trio talks to Alfred again. The AI confesses that after Maria deleted everything, she used Alfred's superior processor to run tests in secret and find an antidote for Sue. Alfred plays a recording of Maria discovering there's a genetic problem and explains that the NT-26D only reacts to Sue and has no effect on anyone else. This means Drill is after her, not Maria. Later in the evening, a mysterious figure enters the house to kidnap Sue, only to find Toby in the bed instead. The person escapes through the window before Toby can hit them with a chair, then he finds a syringe on the floor. The following morning, Sue tells App that she and Toby traded rooms last night by accident and this saved her life. Then App reveals she has a surprise. She has made a superhero suit with temperature control, which will keep Sue awake and enable her to use her power. Sue declares herself to be Invisible Sue and tests it by playing practical jokes on her friends over breakfast. Sue is startled to receive a call at that precise moment from Maria, who informs Sue that she managed to free herself from her captors and requests that Sue meet her at the old market by the fountain. The call abruptly ends after she adds that she is being pursued. Sue receives a call from her father as the 3 of them visit the fountain later in the market. But she hangs up quickly, seeing some dangerous men approaching them. Toby covers Sue's face with a kiss to conceal the first guards walk past them, but soon Drill arrives as well and immediately recognizes them. App uses a drone to knock out most of the guards, and while they run away, Drill is shocked to see Maria, not understanding what she's doing there. The trio hides behind trash cans and Alfred tracks Maria's last call, revealing the location to be in the middle of nowhere. However, Toby points out that's another trap and that Maria is part of the conspiracy because she brought them here. Sue is offended by the implication, but their argument is interrupted by Toby's phone getting a call from Eileen. Annoyed, Sue hangs up and throws the phone in the trash so they can't be tracked. At that moment they notice the dangerous men getting closer, so the trio steals a bike from a delivery man, not realizing that Lenia is in a car behind them. When they eventually discover that Drill's men have blocked the road, Toby devises a plan. Using Sue's power and App's flux capacitor, Toby makes a bike jump that looks like it comes from the movie E.T., which lets them safely escape the vans. A few moments later, they reach the eerie abandoned factory to use the NT-26D sample Toby found. She throws it at the drones and creates a huge explosion that knocks her out too. Meanwhile, Christopher returns home and finds a huge mess in every room before discovering an intruder. Moments later, Sue is surprised to wake up in her bed with Maria sitting by her side reading a comic book. Sue mentions what happened, but Maria says it was all a dream. Then she asks Sue about her companions. Sue explains that Toby is at the Halloween party and App is at the abandoned factory, but oddly, she can't recall telling her mother about them. Sue tries the windows and door after Maria leaves, but they are locked. Alfred interrupts her gloomy mood to show her something. When she gets outside, Maria calls her boss to let her know she has the girl and will see to the other teenagers. Then her body begins to change, revealing that all along she had been Lenia posing as Maria. App is frightened when she sees a car approaching the factory, but she is relieved to see Maria. Moments later, Maria and App enter Sue's room, and Sue freaks out when she sees her mom. She throws Alfred at her, and when the AI confirms she's the real Maria, they reunite with a hug. Then Sue explains only people from her family can use Alfred and plays a recording showing Lenia has been injecting herself with Sue's blood so she could acquire powers too. Mixing NT-26D with Sue's blood makes it a super serum, and each person gets different powers from it. Remembering the weird conversation Sue had with Lenia about her friends, they realize she'll be killing all the witnesses. While Lenia sneaks into the Halloween party where Toby is, Maria and the girls get in the car to go after him. During the ride, Maria explains she was able to escape thanks to Drill's help. It turns out he's been on their side all along and was chasing Sue to offer his assistance. She also reveals she did finish the antidote, but Sue turns it down because she likes being invisible Sue now. However, they can use it to defeat Lenia. When they make it to the Sue is envious of Toby's dancing with Eileen during the party. While Sue searches the dance floor for Lenia, App approaches him and uses a taser to knock him unconscious. When one of Eileen's friends approaches her in the interim and is rejected, it becomes clear that the real Eileen is unconscious in the restroom. When Sue discovers Eileen's friend in tears, she recognizes Lenia hiding there as the girl remarks on how cruel and different Eileen has been today. Due to Maria's disappearance from the car, Sue can only get through to App when attempting to reach the others. The men that pose a threat then show up, so App locks the doors and activates the fog as a distraction. Sue grabs Toby and begins dragging him away as she explains the situation, but Toby doesn't see why he should trust her. Desperate, Sue apologizes for what she said earlier and begs for Toby's help, but suddenly Lenia appears in her true form and captures Toby. While the men finally manage to open the door, Sue becomes invisible and tells Toby to strike. Toby hits Lenia to get her off him and Sue reappears to inject her with the antidote, causing both to fall into the pool. Toby jumps in the water to rescue Sue and App begins manipulating the lights as she announces this was a special Halloween show as a cover story. Seconds later, a teacher finds the real Eileen in the bathroom while the trio escapes with an unconscious Lenia on a cart. When they make it outside, they find Laura waiting for them, saying App's mom sent her to pick her up. The trio almost leaves with her, but Toby freezes when she recognizes Laura's chair as the thing in the corner of Maria's video. At that moment, a bunch of vans arrive and the dangerous men turn out to have taken Christopher, Drill, and Maria hostage. Due to water damage, Alfred calls 911 and instructs Sue to run before turning off, but Sue is too exhausted to move. Then Laura reveals that Lenia has been working for her for all these years, watching Maria and her invention, because Laura wants to use it for her own company. In order for Laura to threaten to harm App and Toby if Sue doesn't, approaches a furious Laura who is seeking retribution. Retaliates by connecting App's flux capacitor to her chair. As Laura begins rolling around like crazy, the police arrive to put an end to this while Sue passes out. Sometime later, Sue wakes up and finds Christopher watching over her. He tells her she fell down the stairs and everything was a dream, but she can tell he's just pranking her. Then Maria reveals she's fixed Alfred and says Sue can maintain it. Sue gives her mother her birthday present at last in exchange. After getting better, Sue draws something new for her comics and declares that she is still a person despite not having any powers. Alfred interrupts to point out that she is rejecting the antidote when she meets with her friends and tries to kiss Toby but ends up throwing up first. Sue gets excited and grabs her friend's hands. Then, as they yell that they're the Fantastic Three, they vanish from sight. Dr. Drill starts to change outside the facility and reveals that he is actually Lenia.